It says we're live. Are you recording?
Yes, I am. Yes.
Okay. I'd like to go ahead and call the utilities meeting to order. We have myself, Mr. Richard, Doc Fellner present. Have you guys had a chance to read the meetings of previous meeting?
I'll make a motion to accept the minutes of the previous meeting.
I'll second that.
Okay, all in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Do we have any amendments to the published agenda? If not, can I have approval of the agenda as published?
I'll make that motion to approve the published agenda.
And I will second that.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay. Tonight, we're going to discuss the PCA review as we do in February and August, and I will turn this over to Mr. Harriger.
Can everyone hear me all right?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay.
Good evening, Ed.
Sorry, I'm on my phone, so and the volume, I have it turned all the way up, but it's hard to hear everybody. Good evening. Thanks for inviting me to the meeting. So the letter that I provided to Mr. Baldinger, short 2-page letter, but it just outlines the PCA calculation for the next 12 months. And so I've looked through and projected power costs for the next 12 months, and, projected energy sales from customers, and then compared that to what the base power cost that's in your PCA ordinance, which I believe as of, I think it was March 1 last year, is 9 cents per kilowatt hour, I believe. So really all it is looking at the projected costs in dollars per kilowatt hour, and then subtracting that base power cost, the 9 cents, to come up with what the power cost adjustment should be for the next period. And, I think by ordinance, typically you review it every 6 months. And, I've kind of, with a lot of our clients, have went to trying to look at least 12 months out to project it. That way there's not a, kind of a up and down, between the 2 6-month periods. More so because, part of your power supply costs, or a pretty decent size of it, changes in June. Your capacity charges to the Regional Transmission Organization, PJM. So I projected it over 12 months. I'd still recommend that you, review it 6 months in to make sure it's on track with, what we thought was going to happen, and then you can make adjustments if needed. But what it's showing, I think the current PCA is 0, and it's been 0 for some time now. And last March, that base power cost was changed to 9 cents because the PCA was showing that it should be negative for quite some time. And I believe, the billing software didn't have the capability to do a negative PCA. So instead of doing that, then, we lowered the base power costs, and then at the same time, that amount that the base power costs decreased, we applied that decrease to all the energy rates for all of the customer classes to reflect that change. So I think last year when that change occurred, there was a decrease of about, on a typical residential bill of 700 kilowatt hours, I think there was a decrease of about $5.80 maybe, somewhere in that range, which is about 5.8% decrease. And then this change for the PCA projected for the next 12 months is 0.00437. So it increased from 0 to a little under a half a cent per kilowatt hour. And that change, so if last year, the bills decreased, $5.8 or $5.80, then this is, I think, adding, I don't have a calculator in front of me, but it should be
$3.
About $3, I think, on a typical residential bill. And that should, be close to collecting costs for the next projected costs for the next 12 months. Are there any questions about what I provided so far?
Yes, Mr. Harrigan, this is Tom Fellner. 2020 was a strange year on many fronts, and our power consumption and those calculations that you had, did that influence the COVID situation, influence the PCA to be adapt? Because it's been, as you said, zero for I want to say almost 2 years. So it was that a factor in the whole thing?
I break it into two pieces here. So, back in February, March last year, which would have been right at the beginning of COVID, when the change to the PCA formula was done, so there wouldn't be a negative PCA. At that time, our projections were, we were intending to try to give back there was a standing overcollection from customers on the PCA back to, I think, January 1 of 2016. And the plan at the time, of course, this is prior to COVID, was that, lowering that base power cost in the PCA formula to 9 cents, leaving the PCA charge at zero, would not only prevent having a negative PCA. If you left it at zero, it'd start chipping away at that overcollection, so it'd give a little bit of money back to customers. And I think at that time, it was projecting to give back maybe $125,000 of the PCA overcollection, which I believe was around $1 million roughly of overcollection back to 2016. And then at the time, the projection for 2021, which wasn't part of the letter, but I was looking out that far to try to help plan, what maybe would be prudent. And, it was showing at that time that if the PCA went from 0 to 0.4 cents, which is close to this number, that it would continue to give back another couple 100,000 of the PCA overcollection in 2021. However, a couple things happened. One was COVID, the obvious one. So your sales were lower last year than what was projected, and really what your sales had been for quite a few years. And it wasn't I wouldn't say it's a drastic drop, but it was enough that, does affect the PCA collection. And power costs were higher because of the sales drop, number one, because you have some fixed costs that regardless of what your sales are, you still have to pay for. If your peak demand is the same, you still got to pay the same amount of dollars, for capacity costs to PJM. So when you divide that over the lower sales number, that dollar per kilowatt hour number is higher, which means in turn that the PCA collection, you need to collect more to keep up with that, to make sure you're collecting your costs. So that was one piece of it. And then there were some projects. I know the hydro projects, the AMP hydro projects, especially the first 6 months of the year, because of all the high water, especially downriver. There's 3 projects on that, and 2 of them, are west of Ohio, so they're down the Ohio River, and one's closer. Smithland is very close to the Mississippi River, and it is, very. The more rain you have, the more it's affected, because all that watershed just gets worse and worse the farther you get down the Ohio River. So their river conditions were pretty terrible the first 6 months. So they undergenerated compared to projected because of all that, the higher water conditions. So that affects your power costs. But I would say the sales is a pretty big piece of it. I think sales were down by maybe about 4 million kilowatt hours. The numbers in my head I'm thinking is about 106 million kilowatt hours is typical, and you came in about 102 million. And so that has an effect on the PCA. So what ended up actually occurring, that $125,000 that I said that, we were projecting that you would give back to customers, so to speak, that was about $500,000. So that it actually gave back more of the PC over collection than what was projected because the costs were higher. So when we get to this one here, the projected 2021 power costs are actually less than what they were a year ago. So in essence, be on the same track as what we were planning to do last year at this time through 2021, it actually could be lower than that to achieve the same goal of giving back, $200,000-$300,000 to customers. However, in my discussions, with staff, in the budget for next year, that, the utility's probably not in the position to give that back right now. And because in essence, it means if everything else remained the same, it means that you're going to under collect on your costs because you have that money sitting in your fund balance if you've over collected it in the past. Of course, that's with all else being the same, which is not always true, but you have to stick to the formula to try to, exact the same result if you can. So if the fund balance wasn't an issue, the PCA, I would say, following the plan that I was trying to accomplish last year, the PCA would be closer to zero. So, however, if the position right now is that, we don't want to be eaten into the fund balance right now, then this is just the true projected cost for this year. So, when you're saying, well, it's been zero for a while, what's changed? If COVID hadn't hit, then I would say that, you'd probably be pretty close to zero still on the PCA. Maybe it'd be 0.1 cents, but it'd be much smaller. But, and being in the position you guys are, and really everyone, that's not the case now. So yeah, I would say that COVID's probably a big driver of it. I know that's an extremely long story. I'm trying to at least give you some concept for, where you were last year prior to COVID, and then what was the thought process going into 2021 at the time, and then what's changed since then. And I would say lower sales, I would guess is partly because of COVID, partly because of weather. I know there's been a few months that have been, either warmer, when they were colder the year before, or vice versa. But I would say COVID probably had some impact on the sales as well. That then led to you giving back more of the over collection, last year. So I would say you're giving money back. So if in essence you gave back what we were intending to get back this year, you already gave it back last year. So if that's the case, and you don't want to erode the fund balance, then this is where the PCA needs to be at.
Mark,
Yes, sir. Go
I want
ahead.
to ask Doc a question.
Go ahead.
Aren't you glad you asked that question?
Yes.
I'd want to jump in and honestly, I'm just trying to make light. I think everyone has gotten a little bit too serious about this stuff to the detriment of what we're trying to get done. Not the electric stuff, but kind of the overall tones. The only thing I would try to do to help clarify, Andy, is to say our reduced consumption last year reduced the pace at which that credit or that over collection was made up or reduced. So I think who knows exactly why consumption was down. I agree very much with Andy's analysis of whether, I think it's part COVID, and I think the weather didn't, in a kind of inverse way, contribute to higher consumption. Of course, on the consumer advocate side of our role, because people didn't have to use electricity in as much through those summer months, our sales were down, but their bills were down. So it's I think what we'll see is much like Andy concluded over 21. We'll see that balance of the, if you will, credit on the over collection. All this stuff is really hot language, you know, but we'll get that PCA reduced back to zero. In 22, the true cost of power may be reflected, but I think that's, I guess that's quite a way off. So hopefully that contributed instead of further confused the issue. But had we used as much electricity as we projected a year ago, that ongoing credit wouldn't be there, and we would probably be back to a zero PCA. So, anyways, Andy, you better agree with that because I'm agreeing with you.
No pressure.
No,
No, I think.
wrong.
Yeah, go ahead. Sorry, what did you say? I missed that.
I just said help clarify. If I got that a little bit wrong, most the PCA, we still have a little bit of this quote credit, and it had we had a hotter year or COVID hadn't hit, you would have hit your targets pretty close, or your projections.
Yeah. Yeah, anyway. I think that's mostly true. And I don't say that in jest. I didn't mean it that way. I think that's the primary driver as to why, you know, you essentially gave back more. You know, power costs were higher for other reasons, but I think the sales obviously was a pretty big driver. And, you know, and I think, you know, if you go a couple of years back, you know, last time we changed the rates, I mean, part of this too was we were assuming, you know, down the road, you know, you have a couple, I would say, short-term debt issuances from a utility perspective, you know, but all the way back to, you know, 2004, 2005 that, you know, are going to be rolling off. And then, you know, at that point, if there's some other debt, you know, that needs to be paid off, but then, you know, there's probably some rate restructuring in the future in the next couple of years, I would say, that, you know, that may make some other changes to, you know, where your kind of your new normal is for your rates, you know, when that time comes. Yeah, and I don't necessarily mean an increase either. I just mean, you know, those are some pretty big debt issuances, and when they roll off, then that kind of changes what your total revenue requirement
is. Mark, thanks for letting me comment on that. I think that by and large, this is a good thing. The comments made about the fund balance, I'm not sure anyone feels strongly one way or another, but I would say I think our fund balance where we're at now is in good shape, and I don't think we need to you know, look at adjusting rates to increase the fund balance or any of those things. So anyways, thanks, Andy.
Yeah.
Does anybody else have any questions for Andy?
Yeah. This is Mike Richard. We review the PCA here at Galleon twice a year. What if we do not change the PCA now and we review it again in August? Do you have a thought on that?
Well, if so, let's say you don't change it now, and you review it in August, and the picture is still the same, and you decide, well, we need to implement it. Well, if you want to get the same results by the end of the year, that PCA is double. I mean, just from a simple math perspective, if your sales are equal in the first 6 months, which they're not exactly equal, but they're pretty close, you know, you're dividing over a smaller number. So it doesn't mean you can't, but you can also, you know, if you did that, you know, you could review, okay, where's our fund balance at, you know, through 6 months, You know, do we feel more comfortable with continuing through the end of the year with a zero PCA, or do we think we need to implement it? I mean, you can certainly phase it in, given that, you know, on paper, you know, you do have a PCA balance. So, you know, that's certainly a possibility. I'm just going from, you know, I don't have my hands in all of the finances right now. So, you know, I can't really opine on whether I think from the fund balance perspective, it's, you know, a good idea. And I think back when we did the rate study, I think the fund balance target was, I don't know, like 2.2 million maybe was kind of the minimum recommended kind of fund balance guideline. I don't know where you guys are right now.
I think it's 3.6, but I could be just making it up. I can't look at the balance. I think
Okay.
we got around 3.6. Not sure if somebody
Okay.
has.
Well,
Yeah, we're doing okay.
that certainly seems pretty healthy. Yeah.
Yeah, we're doing okay. So anyway, the good news is no PCA adjustment that's the recommendation, correct?
Yes, Doc.
Well,
I don't know that was my recommendation. No,
Oh, what is it?
I mean, if the fund balance, you know, if the fund balance isn't an issue, then from what you told me, if it's 3.6 million, you know, that seems plenty high enough. I think, just a second here. Let me. Just checking on something real quick. Yeah,
Yes,
so so just to give you an idea of the dollar amount, so if the PCA should be at 0.4 cents to collect costs this year, then if you leave it at 0 and everything remains exactly the same based on the projection, if it's identical, then that means you essentially are under collecting about $460,000. So, which I think is still less than what the PCA balance is, which, I mean, from a PCA collection standpoint is okay. And if nothing else changes and you don't have any extraordinary expenses that come out of cash, then that means that, you know, you'd be at 3.2 million, which is still, you know, probably $1 million above, you know, what that kind of that minimum fund balance guideline is.
Okay.
So I think given that, I think, you know, having a zero PCA is probably okay, with the exception that, of course, you know, it should be reviewed in 6 months for sure, just to make sure. I mean, we always recommend that because, you know, you get an idea of what's happened through the first 6 months, and then you can, you know, it gives you a chance to adjust, you know, in case something extraordinary happens in those first 6 months.
Yes, Doc, you had your hand up.
Yeah, just a couple of points. One, I guess I'd like to, I trust the mayor's memory, but I would like to research a more accurate figure on the fund balance.
Give me a second, Doc. I'm looking it up here.
The second point I'd like to make is to Mr. Richard is that I think it would be a safer course to consider implementing the suggestion of the PCA and then having the ability to reduce it to 0 in 6 months as opposed to the need for doubling it in 6 months. I think that would be less of a bitter pill to swallow for the consumer.
Yeah, we finished at 4.9, Mark and Doc and Mike. 4.9 million unencumbered. We had actually 5.3. This is the end of the year balance, so there's so much in flux. We had that goofy December where we didn't collect much, and then we've had a real good January in terms of how our customers, you know, made up for December and January. So we ended up at 4.9. So
Okay.
that's just it didn't take much. I just checked the report. 4.9 unencumbered, 5.1 encumbered.
Doc, I agree with you. I was just kind of thinking, for lack of a better term, out loud.
Sure.
Because of the fact that we do have such a large fund balance in that, and by ordinance, we're going to have to review this again in August. Plus, there's, I guess, too, is the consideration of, while I appreciate Andy's very thorough review of this, factors can change between now and August, plus or minus. So we could be looking also at August and having only to increase the PCA to what is proposed now, which is a 0.0043, whatever. You know what I mean?
Sure. Absolutely. I agree with you. And I think, if Mr. Harriger was doing some calculations based on a lower fund balance, and that was his recommendation, that certainly would change given the new information. So, we've been by, as you said, Mike, ordinance, diligently looking at it twice a year, going through some calculations. So with that new information, I've got no problem adjusting it if need be in August. Mark, what do you think?
Well, I was just going to ask Andy if we leave it at 0, or what if we did 0.2 of a cent instead of 0.5 of a cent? Would that be a safer bet? Do half of what you called for? I mean,
Hold on,
we
let me
know-
look at the, let's see.
We're putting you on the
So, no, I'm fine. So, the PCA balance as of the end of December was about $500,000. So, given what I said earlier about, let's say, everything matches perfectly with the projection, then if you left it at 0, you'd be giving back a little over $400,000. So that'd still be within, your PCA balance that you owe to customers over time anyways. So given all that and the fund balance, being at 4.9 million, I would not be opposed to, like Mr. Fellner said, if I knew that the fund balance wasn't an issue, my PCA recommendation would have been lower. It would have been very low or 0. I mean, it would have been very close to 0, if not 0. So, and like I said, 0, given the numbers I have now, 0 would still not put you, it wouldn't flip you by the end of the year. It wouldn't flip you to, owing, the customers owing you money, So of course, a lot of things can change in a year. We've learned that in a year, but it would take a lot to where I'd be more worried if your fund balance was like 2.8 million and you're, going to give back $500,000, hoping everything's going to go right, but that's not the situation. So yeah, I wouldn't have qualms whatsoever about, if you decide to set it at 0 for this year and, review it in August and see if anything's changed, but I wouldn't have a problem with that.
Yeah, I don't have a problem keeping it at 0 either, Doc. I mean,
Sure. Well, absolutely. Given the new information, and Andy, we're not holding your feet to the fire to looking into the crystal ball. We realize, you're making projections based on information. So we're not asking you to tell us what to do. We understand it's a recommendation. So we'll put on our big boy pants and make a decision.
No, it's no problem. I would, like I said, what I was trying to get to, maybe I wasn't, clear enough, but, given the information I have now, my letter would probably say 0. So that would probably be my recommendation. Yeah.
Well, we probably should have sent you the fund balance, but it's, really easy to get. So
Okay.
I don't want to be too grumpy, but I sure as hell don't want to impose any, even if it's only a couple $3 a month. That's, we've got, so anyways, that's all I'll say.
Okay.
My goal would be to reduce this PCA balance that we're talking about to zero through this year, and then take a look at 2020, how we try to have the PCA reflect true power cost, and we stop correcting that mistake that was made over a couple of years. Quite honestly, when we weren't using Sawville as diligently probably as we should have. So, anyways, thank you.
Mark, I don't think, given this information, there's an ordinance on the table that we probably don't need to do anything with, correct?
No, we don't need to, if we're gonna keep it at zero, there's no change in the PCA. We'll just have to mention it at full council.
Okay,
I don't think we need legislative action, do we, Thomas?
No.
No,
Okay,
you don't need it.
awesome.
so our consensus of the committee is to leave the PCA at zero.
I
Yeah.
concur with that.
Okay, I agree. So,
Mark, I think you need a motion for that effect.
okay, can I have a motion to keep the PCA at zero, please?
I'll make that motion to leave the PCA at zero.
I'll second that motion.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay, motion carries. We're gonna leave the PCA at zero. We'll mention it to full council and move on to the next. Thanks, Andy, for all your help.
Yeah, thanks a lot, everyone.
Okay, our next subject tonight is a stormwater credit. I guess I'll leave that to the mayor or Nikki.
I'll just go ahead and what we're discussing here is what to do with the 2020 CARES Act funds. There's a balance of around 100,000, give or take 10%. And the recommendation that we're making to council, that the mayor, the service director are making to council is that we apply that last $100,000 as a credit back to the stormwater fund. And so that's the discussion. I think that if there's a competing interest, I don't even know if that's the right word, it might be that we could give another smaller credit or offer a credit to our utility customers, the electric sewer, like we had done late last year. So my recommendation is to try and credit back to the stormwater fund on a account basis those 3 months in which we called it a holiday last year. That's the best word, but what we had is a moratorium, maybe that was fancier, on collecting stormwater. That cost us.
You froze, Mayor. Huh. Well,
Darn Spectrum.
darn spectrum.
So,
Mr. Chairman, I'm not going to jump into Tom's thing, and I'm sure he has something he wants to complete as that thought in the presentation. But I will tell you that I'm going to have some input after he is done.
Okay, thank you.
I have to wait for him to try to come back in because he did
Yeah.
egg, so I'll have to watch for him.
is Ms. Ward there to maybe elaborate?
She is. I do see her, yes.
I'm here, Dr. Fellner. I think I would like Tom to finish elaborating.
Okay,
I didn't have the conversation with him today, so I don't want to give information that's not accurate.
Sure.
You don't see him coming back on.
Oh, he's probably mad.
Is he still talking?
He closed out his, he actually left he has left the building. So it's like, I'm waiting for him to like come back, trying to get back in the meeting. So I'm not seeing him. So.
Well, until we wait on the mayor, Nikki, do you have anything on Fund 625?
I don't. Eunice, do you have, I think you had some information on this one.
The last conversation that I had with the mayor and Gail, I don't know if you've had anything further since you and I spoke, but we have a balance left in 625, which I think the mayor might have touched on maybe in finance or the council meeting. Last discussion I had with him, we were looking at using that. We have to spend that money and get it out of there. And it has to be compliant with the original debt ordinance that was passed when we borrowed that money. So it was suggested by our bond counsel that we use that money to pay down some of that debt. So unless there was a change of plans, that was the last conversation that I had.
Eunice, what type of money are we looking at?
I don't have access to any reports or anything from here. For some reason, 103,000 is sticking out in my head. Does anybody else have any other thoughts or?
I was thinking it was around 100,000 too, Eunice, somewhere in that.
Okay. I might be able to pull it up on my phone if I can get into my email and see what reports were mailed to you guys at month end. The cash fund balance, and that is what you would be looking at. Julie, I don't know if you can pull it up since you're there or not. I don't know.
I'm gonna look, so. Not that. I don't know where the mayor's went. I'm waiting for him to come back. It's like, ee. So,
I want to say I sent that email like maybe around the 13th, Julie, unless you're going into VIP to pull it up. I don't know.
put into my email. It's actually faster than VIP for me. Let's see here. Eunice, month end. There we go. It was the 13th. Statement of cash position. All right. 625.
I still don't get those reports, Eunice.
103,489.48.
Nice.
I'll double check on that, Mark. I even went back and manually entered it when I did those emails. So I'll see what email it's going to for you. I thought it came up properly.
Yeah, I haven't got those for probably over a year. Well, I guess we just wait and see if the mayor, did you try to call him, Julie?
No, I did not.
I texted him and he said he is planning to come back in. So I don't know if he's trying at the moment.
Yeah, I mean, wonder if his internet may have went down. So,
Spectrum's
Some of
been
that.
working on it.
yeah.
That stormwater credit was talked about somewhere else, wasn't it, Doc? Wasn't that in finance?
Oh, not in the last finance committee meeting, as I recall. I can't say that for sure. I wasn't able to attend the last utilities meeting, so I don't know if that was,
It wasn't talked about then,
okay.
because this, didn't he say this is leftover COVID funds?
It
Right.
is.
Yes.
It is.
Okay.
Mr.
So,
Palmer, can you proceed
Up
without
Sure.
stepping all over the mayor?
Here comes the mayor.
Oh,
Okay.
never mind.
No, let's wait for Tom.
Sure.
you're on, Mayor.
Yeah, I don't know what happened.
He's alive.
Challenge. What's that?
I said you're alive.
Yeah. All right.
Where's
I'll
your
be-
ficus?
Well, I'm not quite sure where I broke off. What I was trying to express is the desire of the mayor's office to have the last $100,000 approximately of CARES Act money applied to the stormwater accounts that or to the stormwater fund based on a per account basis, based on a basis. How bad of a sentence is that? How bad am I right now? Based on dividing that over the 90 days. We called it a holiday. I don't think that's a problem. And so that's what I'd like to utilize those funds to.
Oh, boy.
Uh-oh.
That's all I got. Sorry, I held everyone. I didn't hold anyone up, but somehow.
Could I paraphrase that, Mayor, to see if I understand it? We gave, essentially, we reduced the stormwater for customers over a 3-month period.
Yes, sir.
Reflected in their bill. You are suggesting that to recoup that money that was credited, we use this amount of CARES funds to put directly, CARES Act money to put directly into the stormwater fund. You're not suggesting that we use that pool of dollars to apply to another credit to the customers, correct?
You've got it. Those would be,
Okay.
those are the two most likely choices. Hell, we could probably like put in touch-free toilets and fix things up. Maybe we could buy an ambulance, but I think our focus has been on trying to get the money back to the customers. This $100,000 would not go directly to the customers, but it would help offset the $66,000 or so a month that we went without during those early days of the pandemic. So
Perfect.
yeah,
Thank you.
sure.
Okay, anybody else have anything on that?
I would like to add something, Mark.
Can I ask a question, Mark?
Sure, Gail.
Oh, wait.
That sounds like he's trying to use CARES dollars for revenue, and I'm not sure we're allowed to do that.
That's what I wanted to talk about, Gail.
Go ahead.
You know, I think it's a great idea as I heard it, but I was asked by the mayor's office, I think yesterday afternoon or this morning, to look into whether or not this is something the city can do. I'm talking specifically now about the revenue replacement, not the credit. Obviously, the credits you can do without question. We've done it before with the electric fund. We can do it with this. You know, Matt and I were spent a good part of the day going back and forth on this issue. And as it stands, as the day closed, it looks increasingly like this is something we cannot do. The whole question is whether or not this does constitute revenue replacement. The issue is the situation rather, is that the United States Department of the Treasury issued their regulations about CARES Act expenditures after this was enacted. And because of that, we didn't have a chance. We didn't know, certainly no fault of the cities. we moved ahead with that holiday period. So we have this situation where if it does constitute revenue replacement, according to the United States Department of Treasury regs, we cannot do that. We can obviously do the credits. I'll continue to look at that. If council wants to have this ordinance created anyway, that would do the return of the CARES money into the fund without the credits, we can do that, and I'll have a more definitive answer for you on Tuesday night, but that's where it stands.
Hey, thanks for calling me and letting me know that, Thomas.
Well, I let Matt know. Matt was in conversation with you. We talked
Thanks.
about that.
Hey, thanks.
Yep.
Mark, I'm sorry, that was on the agenda. Let's move on, please.
Okay, now we're gonna have a discussion on Fund 625, and Eunice kind of filled us in a little bit. If you want to elaborate on that.
No, not really. I think we have to spend the money. If you said to me, or did you say Eunice?
Eunice filled us in when you got cut off.
Hey. Yeah.
Mayor, I would just like you to clarify, because I said the last conversation you and I had was in regards to paying some of the debt down with that, but I didn't know if that had changed.
You know, I think that's an excellent idea. I'm not sure who came up with it, but hopefully a mayor's office staff or the law director doesn't have a problem with that. But yeah, I thought that was a really good idea. That's all I got.
Do we need legislative action on this one to pay down debt, Thomas, or?
No, I don't know. Wait a second, Mark. We don't need that. It needs appropriated. It wasn't appropriated, correct, Eunice?
Correct. But I'm not sure.
Weigh on that.
This is something we'll handle when we go to roll the debt. Is that not correct, Mayor? Like when we do the pay down, when we roll our debt, we'll use that to go towards that?
There's two pieces. One, we'll need to appropriate the money. That's why I was bringing it to council's attention. And I think that would only require an amendment to the appropriation. When that's done, it doesn't matter. We could wait, you're right, until we start paying those debts off. I want to say it's in May, but it may be earlier.
No,
when we owe that electric debt.
We usually do that, I think, I'll have to look and see which one it applies to.
Okay. Either way, the point would be that the recommendation would be to use that money. We don't have a capital project in the budget for this year. And so I think that it makes sense to get ahead of that debt and pay that down. That's why I don't know.
Okay, Eunice, I have a question. Once we use all that in 625, is that account going to be closed, or is that still going to be for capital?
It'll be marked inactive.
Okay.
And currently, since we have a balance in there, interest is being posted to it, and it will continue to as long as we have a balance in there. So since that money was initially borrowed for that specific project, it has to be used up for that. And part of what brought the attention to this is you all should have received a memo from Gail that we did the post-issuance compliance review. And that's something that has come up every year. And I won't be able to word it as well as Allison did with me, but if you leave it set too long, then it can come into a refund status where you have to look at doing different things with that. And we don't want it to come to that.
I agree with that 100%.
Okay, so this will be discussed later then?
Well, I could go ahead and for the next finance meeting, I could request the appropriation so that it's in place and ready. And in the meantime, I will look at the payment and the timing of that so that we'll be prepared.
Okay.
Yeah, I wish I knew it off the top of my head. I'm sorry, Doc and others. I don't know when every debt payment is, but I think it's in May. I don't think it's in February. We have we have some February debts that if you look in the appropriation, we're starting to reserve money for those earlier debt payments. I imagine Eunice can look it up on her.
I actually emailed that to myself so that I could work on some of that stuff tonight. So is that the 2011 one, Mayor? Do you recall?
Yeah, there's a big one and a small one. Sounds
Yeah,
silly.
I know there's more than one, so I just, but
Okay.
I'll look into that and have that for the finance meeting. I'll be able to tell you when the payment and everything is on it then.
Good.
Okay, moving on to the next subject is a bucket truck. Who wants
In
to?
budget,
Pardon?
in the budget, I think it requires us to encumber funds this year for a truck that'll be spec'd out, it'll be detailed out, and an order will be placed. So, not sure if Jerry ever got on, has anything to add to that, but what we're looking for is authorization to bid the project or to secure it through state purchasing.
Okay, so I would say go ahead but the other members have to make the motion.
Is this going to be in ordinance form on Tuesday, or is it just a kind of voice vote? I mean, it's in the budget. I don't know that we need to approve anything, or am I wrong on that?
Doc, I think because of the dollar amount involved, I think we have to have something for it.
Well, I make a motion that we proceed with writing an ordinance for the purchase of the bucket truck for next council meeting.
Do we have the amount and everything, you know, from the state purchasing, and is all that stuff ready?
I would imagine that it would be by Tuesday,
Okay, okay.
the ordinance. We don't have an ordinance yet, so.
Well, that's what I would be tasked
Right,
with doing,
of
and I
course.
don't know, I haven't seen any of have they got the quote and through the state purchasing? I don't know if,
Jerry's on by phone, I see there. Can you unmute him and maybe help him out and see if he has any answers?
I'll ask him to unmute, see if he can unmute. I just asked him.
I think from what the mayor said, that all we have to do is give him permission to get the appropriation to go ahead and get the bid, right?
Yeah, we either need to authorize through state purchasing or authorize the service director to bid the truck. And Jerry would have he's either scoped it out with state purchasing, or he is going to perhaps prefer to bid it out. There he is.
Can we do
Yeah,
it by
can you hear me
amount
now?
to exceed
There you
what's
go.
budgeted?
Yes, we can, Jerry.
Okay, yes, we had it bid in 2020. And we do have the state bid. We didn't order it. It's about a year out after we do order it. So we've been waiting just for the go-ahead to go ahead and finalize the order. It's with UTE. Been talking to Bill Sesser.
So Julie, can you get the information you need from Jerry to do this in ordinance form for Tuesday?
Yes, I can. If he's got all that ready, yes, I can do that.
Okay. So do we need to make any motion tonight, Thomas, or just?
Yeah, it's a good thing you do. We're still gonna need to vote it on Tuesday, but having you guys vote it tonight to send it will just be like the last time. It'll be a good indication to the rest of council when it's time to vote something on the agenda that you all were in favor of it.
Well, I believe I have a motion on the table.
Okay.
Yes, I would like to second Doc Fellner's motion.
Okay, and I would like to say all in favor.
Aye.
Aye. Okay, so we have unanimous consent to put this on the agenda for Tuesday, if everybody can get their numbers together. Okay,
Okay, then I need to get that information to Julie.
Yes, please.
Okay, I will have to talk to Bill Sesser again because it's been about a year and check the price, but then I'll get back with you on that.
Perfect. Thank you.
did you have something, Mayor?
No,
Okay,
Jerry should probably, it'd be well for Jerry to work through his supervisor, but since you asked, that's all I was gonna say.
okay. Do we have any other business? If not, our next meeting will be March 3rd. Do I have a motion to adjourn?
I'll make that motion to adjourn.
I'll second that motion.
Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Meeting adjourned at 7:56. See y'all Tuesday.